My name is Malik Turner. I am 28 years old, and for most of my life, my parents have acted like my worth depended on how impressive I looked to other people. They never said it outright, but everything they did told me. They cared about results, about appearances, about winning. They never cared much about who I actually was. When I lost my job at a logistics warehouse 2 weeks ago, they showed me exactly where I stood with them. My father, Conrad, made this small, disappointed noise every time he passed me in the hallway. My mother, Denise, talked to me like I was a broken appliance that needed to be put out on the curb. I knew they judged me. I just did not expect them to be so open about it. It all started on a Wednesday morning. I was standing at the stove heating up leftover pasta, minding my own business, when my mother walked in. She stared at me for a long second and said, with this cold, sharp tone, that losers ate leftovers. She did not even blink. She just said it and kept walking. I laughed under my breath, because what else was I supposed to do? But the laugh did nothing. The room still felt small and heavy. My younger sister, Amina, had just landed a community outreach internship with a local arts nonprofit. Unpaid, part-time, barely enough hours to count as real experience. But to my parents, it might as well have been a law degree from Harvard. They talked about her like she was a gift sent directly from heaven. They bought her a new blazer. They bought her a new laptop bag. And 2 days later, they started setting up the backyard for a celebration. I walked downstairs and saw folding chairs, bags of charcoal, and 2 coolers full of soda. I asked what was going on. My mother barely looked up from her checklist. She said they were hosting a small gathering for Amina. My father stood beside her, proud and puffed up like he had raised a senator. I asked if I could help set anything up. My father leaned on the counter and said he did not want me sulking around, reminding everyone what failure looked like. He said it with no humor. My mother chimed in, saying Amina earned her celebration and that I had brought nothing home except worry and pity. There was no pause in her voice. She said it straight, as if delivering a weather report. I felt that sting in my chest. I told them it was not like I wanted to lose my job. My father shrugged and said I had always been full of talk, never full of action. He said maybe I needed to learn how real life worked. My mother nodded firmly, like she had been waiting for someone to say it. Amina walked in near the end of that conversation. She heard enough to know I was getting dragged. She looked at me with this helpless expression, but she did not defend me. She avoided the moment like it might explode in her hands if she touched it. That was normal for her. She avoided conflict like it was poison. On the day of the celebration, my mother woke me up by banging on my door. She told me to stay out of the way if I was not going to contribute. I said I just wanted some coffee. She physically blocked the machine while bragging on the phone about how proud she was of Amina. I tried to grab a bag of chips from the counter, and my father slapped my hand away like I was a child. I felt something break inside me a little. I left the house. I spent a couple hours at a park scrolling through job boards, trying not to spiral. When I came home, the party was in full swing. Music, laughter, everyone smiling in the backyard. I did not want to ruin anything, so I tried to sneak straight to my room. But my father caught me on the stairs. He told me not to step outside and ruin the celebration. I told him I was not planning to. He nodded, satisfied, as if I were some problem finally contained. That night I sat in my room listening to all of them celebrate. I heard karaoke, clapping, jokes about how Amina was destined for greatness. I heard nothing about me except whispers about how I needed to pull it together. Then came a knock on my door. I hoped it was Amina. Instead, it was my father holding a drink. He told me I could have been out there if I had gotten my life together. I told him I did not want to celebrate an unpaid internship. His eyes hardened. He told me to grow up or get out. I looked him dead in the face and said, "You will regret this celebration one day." He laughed and walked away. I sat on my bed in silence after that. Something inside me shifted. It was not anger at first. It was clarity. They did not see me. They never had. So I decided I was done trying to prove anything to them. If they wanted a show, I would give them one. That night was the beginning. The morning after Amina's celebration, I woke up to the sound of my mother talking loudly in the hallway. Her voice carried through my door like she wanted me to hear every word. She was on the phone with one of her friends, bragging about Amina again, and slipping in not so subtle comments about how some people in the house were not doing anything with their lives. She said it with this smug tone, like she enjoyed the idea of me hearing it. I stared at my ceiling, exhausted. It was 8 in the morning. I had slept maybe 4 hours because the noise from the backyard celebration had gone late into the night. I finally got up to get some water. My father was in the kitchen staring at his phone. He did not look at me when he spoke. He just said that if I was not going to work, then I should at least stop eating so much of their food. His voice was cold, dismissive, and completely serious. My mother came downstairs a minute later and walked right past me as if I were a chair taking up space. She began packing up leftover party supplies, humming loudly like she was in some movie montage about successful families. Amina walked in from outside wearing a new cardigan, probably another gift from my mother. She saw me but did not say anything, just gave me that same apologetic look she always had, like she wanted to help but did not know how. Breakfast came around, and my mother made eggs for everyone except me. She slid plates across the table and then turned her back on me, as if I were not standing there. She said there were noodles in the pantry if I wanted something. So I boiled ramen, sat at the end of the table, and scrolled through my phone while they talked about Amina's bright future like I was a ghost at the edge of their perfect little world. Later that afternoon, I tried to get on the Wi-Fi to send out job applications. It would not connect. I went downstairs to check the router and found a sticky note on it that said, "Family only. Get your own." The handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. I asked her if the Wi-Fi was down. She did not look up from wiping the counter. She said the password had been changed. I asked why. She said if I wanted to act like an adult, then I could pay for my own service. She said it in that calm, matter-of-fact tone that cut deeper than yelling ever could. I went back to my room and used a hotspot. My phone bill went up that month, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me complain. It got worse as the days went on. They locked up groceries in a storage bin in the garage. I walked in on my mother putting a padlock on it. She said it was not personal, just practical. Food was expensive, and they needed to make sure it was not wasted. I told her I was not a thief. She shrugged and said I ate more than I contributed. I felt myself getting angrier with each passing day. My friend Devin told me to just move out, but he had a basement apartment in his parents' house. It was easy for him to talk about independence when he had space and support. I checked my bank account daily. I had just enough to survive maybe 2 months on my own. Not enough to be comfortable. Not enough to feel safe. Then one night, my father came into my room. He closed the door behind him and sat on my bed like he wanted to have a serious talk. He said he knew I was struggling, but that I needed to start pulling my weight. I told him I was trying. I had an interview scheduled. He said he had heard that before. He said I had been saying I would get my life together for years. I told him it had been weeks, not years. He shook his head with disappointment already loaded into the gesture, like nothing I said mattered. When I pushed back, he pointed his finger at me. I told him to stop treating me like trash. His expression darkened, and he shoved my shoulder just enough to send a message. I shoved him back. For a split second he looked shocked that I had stood up for myself. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. The next morning my mother sent me a rent request. No explanation, no message, just an invoice titled rent. I texted her asking what this was. She said if I wanted to live in her house, I had to pay like an adult. I told her I did not have the money. She said that was not her problem. That was the moment I realized they did not just want me to grow up. They wanted me gone. They wanted me to struggle and fail so they could feel justified in their judgment. So I started planning. Not out of spite at first. Out of survival. I began looking for rooms to rent. I started picking up small online gigs. I sold old belongings, sneakers I had saved up for, old gaming gear, anything that could bring in extra cash. At the same time, I began writing down all the things I had done for this house over the years. Fixing phones, setting up their internet, managing their streaming accounts, handling online paperwork, restarting the printer every time it jammed. Every small thing they relied on but never acknowledged. It was a list longer than I expected, and it was the beginning of my shift in power. Once I started making that list, everything became clearer. I had spent years quietly keeping my family's world running without receiving a single word of appreciation for it. I fixed problems before they even saw them. I handled every digital issue, every malfunction, every forgotten password, every tedious online form. I was the invisible support beam they never cared to acknowledge. And now they wanted me gone? Fine. I would go. But I would not go empty-handed. I found a room listed online by an older guy named Clarence. The place was not pretty. It smelled faintly of cigarette smoke even though Clarence swore he had quit 8 years ago. The floorboards creaked, and the kitchen cabinets leaned slightly to the left. But it was cheap, and it was available immediately. I visited the place on a Thursday night. Clarence showed me around while talking non-stop about his motorcycle club. I nodded politely, said I would take the room, and handed him cash for the first month. I did not tell him a single detail about my home situation. I did not want anyone to know where I was going. Not yet. Back home, I started moving my belongings out in small pieces. A backpack of clothes here, a box of chargers there, my old laptop wrapped in a hoodie so it would not make noise. I took only what mattered, and I took it at odd hours when the house was quiet. It was strange how little they noticed. My parents were so wrapped up in Amina's internship and their disappointment in me that they barely looked in my direction. A week later, I had almost everything out except a small stack of notebooks, a few shirts, and a toothbrush. I waited until 2 in the morning, grabbed the last items, and walked downstairs. I placed my house key on the kitchen counter. I thought about writing a note, something dignified, something polite. But then I remembered all the cold remarks, all the petty punishments, all the ways they had made me feel like a burden. I decided they did not deserve an explanation. I texted Amina only so she would not panic. I told her I was safe and that I needed space. I told her not to tell our parents where I was. She replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. It hurt a little, but I also understood she never wanted to take a side. She never wanted conflict. That was her way of surviving in that house, and I respected it. The first week in my new place was quiet. No loud arguments, no slammed doors, no judgment following me from room to room. I could breathe again. I could walk from the bedroom to the kitchen without feeling like every step was monitored. I felt lighter, even though I was living in a place with flickering lights and a roommate who snored through walls. At first, I expected my phone to blow up. I expected my parents to demand answers or at least pretend to care where I had gone. But nothing came. No missed calls, no texts, not even a message from my father telling me I had made a foolish decision. They really did not care. Or so I thought. About 2 weeks after I left, I received a voicemail from my father. His voice was irritated but controlled. He said he needed help getting into his laptop because he could not access one of his accounts. He asked me to call him back. I deleted the voicemail. A few days later, another message. This time about the printer. He sounded slightly more concerned. I ignored that one too. Then came a text. It said, "Fix this now." No greeting, no please, no hint of respect. I laughed when I saw it. I felt absolutely nothing. My father ran a side operation selling refurbished electronics online. It was his pride, his big independent project. But the truth was simple. I managed all the technical parts. I created his listings. I handled customer messages. I organized inventory. I set up his online payment system. I reset his passwords whenever he forgot them, which was often. He had bragged to everyone about how he ran a smooth, efficient operation. Now, with me gone, that illusion was falling apart. I could see the cracks forming from a distance. Customers complained in the group chats he used for selling. Orders were late. Listings were inaccurate. Payments were not showing up correctly. He had to respond with vague excuses because he did not know how to fix any of it. I did not interfere. I simply stopped helping. My mother soon joined in, texting me in a tone that tried to mix guilt and superiority. She said if I cared about my family, I would help my father. She said I knew how important his business was. She said I was being immature by staying silent. I read everything and said nothing. Meanwhile, my own situation slowly improved. I took on small freelance jobs fixing tablets and phones. I helped Devin's uncle with inventory at his warehouse for cash on the side. I even managed to pick up a regular gig repairing laptops for a small computer shop. The money was not amazing, but it was steady, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like mine. A month after I moved out, my phone buzzed. It was Amina. She asked if I knew how to fix the television because our parents could not get it to turn on. I thought about replying. I almost typed something, but her next message said, "They are losing it without you." That one made me pause, because for the first time since leaving, I realized something. They had built so much of their comfort on my unpaid labor. They had taken me for granted for years. Now their world was finally adjusting to my absence, and it was only the beginning. The collapse of my parents' comfortable bubble did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, like a house settling unevenly until the floors started to tilt. From a distance, I watched the shift. Their confident voices grew quieter. Their social posts about Amina's internship became less frequent. Their messages to me shifted tone, inch by inch, from commanding to pleading. Meanwhile, I stayed busy. My new room was small, but it felt like freedom. Clarence mostly kept to himself, which I appreciated. The downstairs smelled like old carpet, but I could breathe easy for the first time in years. I took long walks in the evenings, drank coffee without judgment, and slept without the weight of my father's disapproval pressing on my chest. Each week, my phone buzzed with more messages from my parents. At first, they were short and curt. My father asked for help with his online store again. My mother asked for assistance with her community mailing list. I ignored everything. If they wanted me to be an adult, then they could learn to live without me. But the messages kept coming, and they grew increasingly desperate as their routines began to fall apart. 2 months after I left, I ran into my father at a gas station. I had just bought a bottle of water when I heard someone say my name behind me. I turned to see him standing there with tired eyes and a wrinkled shirt. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the months had weighed on him. He approached me with frustration already written on his face. He said I was childish for ignoring them, that family should be there for one another. I told him that I had been there for years, and they had treated me like a problem instead of a person. He stepped closer, his jaw tight, and said that I owed them respect. I told him that respect should go both ways. He shoved my arm lightly, as if trying to reassert authority. I stayed steady. I did not raise my voice. I did not give him the fight he wanted. He walked away muttering about ungrateful children. That was the moment I realized he had no idea how to exist without someone to look down on. After that encounter, the messages from my mother arrived daily. She said the bills were piling up. She said the side business was falling apart because my father could not manage it. She said she was ashamed to ask, but they needed me. Every message tried to guilt me into helping. Every message ignored the years of disdain they had shown me. I ignored them all. Amina texted me more often during that time. She asked basic questions like how to fix the internet or why the printer kept flashing red. I answered none of them. I knew she was trying to be the peacekeeper, but she had never defended me when it mattered. She chose silence to protect her own comfort. Now she was stuck trying to hold up a house that had always relied on me. I will not lie. A small part of me felt bad for her. but I did not feel bad enough to save them. Then came the final shift. I heard from Devon's mother that she had run into my mother at the store. She said my mother looked exhausted and stressed, like she had not slept well in weeks. She had said something about everything falling apart and wishing things could go back to how they were before. I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered every cold remark, every snide comment, every way she had treated me like a burden when I lost my job. That memory hardened something inside me again. Around that time, I started checking rental listings for fun. I wanted to see what was available. That was when I noticed something strange. The house next door to my parents' place had a room for rent. It was a decent price, too. I clicked through the photos, and for the first time in months, I smiled without bitterness. I messaged the landlord, a woman named Tasha, who responded within an hour. My friend Rachel from high school needed a place too, so we decided to split it. We toured the house 2 days later. It was clean, bright, and close enough to my job leads in the city. We signed the lease by the end of the week. Moving in so close to my parents may have looked petty, but it was not revenge. It was closure. It was a reminder that I was no longer under their roof, no longer under their control, and no longer required to shrink myself to fit their expectations. The day after we moved in, I hosted a small cookout. Devin came with his girlfriend. A couple neighbors stopped by. Even the mail carrier waved and grabbed a soda. Music played, laughter filled the yard, and the smell of grilled chicken drifted over the fence. My father stepped onto his porch when he heard the noise. He stared at the gathering like he could not understand how it existed without his permission. My mother walked out a few minutes later. She called my name and motioned for me to come over, but I turned back to the grill and kept flipping burgers. Amina texted me during the cookout. "Are you really doing this right now?" I replied, "You can come over if you want." She wrote back, "I cannot." I answered, "That is your choice." By the time the evening ended, I looked over to see my parents sitting on their porch. They were not arguing. They were not glaring at anyone. They were simply crying quietly together. I did not walk over. I did not comfort them. I did not owe them that. Their world had finally adjusted to my absence, and they did not like the view. The morning after the cookout, I woke to more missed calls than I had ever seen on my phone. My father had called 3 times. My mother had called twice. There were 2 messages from an unknown number, which I assumed were relatives trying to broker peace like they were mediating some family crisis. I ignored all of it. My mother left a voice message that began with her usual sharp tone, but softened halfway through. She said they needed my help. She said they were sorry for how things had gone. She said they could not keep up with bills and responsibilities, and that my father's side business was collapsing. She said they felt abandoned. The word abandoned sat in my mind for a long moment. That was the word I had lived under for years while still sharing their roof. I pressed delete. Later that afternoon, I heard a soft knock at my door. I looked through the window and saw Amina standing at the edge of the walkway. She did not look angry. She looked tired, worn down, like the house behind her was draining her every day. I stepped outside and waited for her to speak. She said our parents were falling apart. She said the arguments were constant. She said our mother cried at night. She said our father barely slept and kept muttering about mistakes and responsibilities. She said the stress was becoming unbearable. I asked her what she wanted from me. She said she did not know. She said she only knew that everything felt wrong. I reminded her gently that she had stayed silent during every moment I needed support. I reminded her she watched them belittle me without stepping in. She looked at the ground and whispered that she knew. She said she was sorry. She said she wished she had been braver. That was the first genuine apology I had heard from anyone in my family. I nodded and told her she could come over any time if she needed space. I meant it. She was my sister, and even though she had not defended me, she had not attacked me either. She had always been trapped in the same house, just in a different way. She nodded and walked home. I could see in her posture that she carried more weight than she let on. The calls from my parents did not stop. If anything, they multiplied. My father sent a long text saying that he needed help reorganizing his business accounts. He said he was drowning. He said he was sorry for how he treated me. He said he did not know how else to ask. My mother sent her own message later that night. She said she was sorry too. She said she realized they had pushed me away. She said they never expected everything to fall apart so quickly. She said they needed me more than ever. I sat on my bed and read all of their words slowly. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, with a strange, calm understanding. They were feeling the consequences of years of taking me for granted. Their house had never run smoothly because of them. It had run smoothly because of me. And now, without me, the weak parts of the structure had collapsed. I did not reply. My friends told me to block their numbers, but I did not. I did not want revenge. I did not want to punish them. What I wanted was space, distance, a boundary they were now learning to respect simply because I enforced it with silence. Weeks passed like this. I worked. I ate in peace. I took on more freelance repair jobs. I even began saving money. Rachel turned out to be a good roommate, focused and quiet, except when we cooked dinner together or talked about old classmates. Life became steady, in a way it had never been before. Now and then, I saw my parents sitting on their porch. They did not look angry anymore. They looked like people who had seen something break inside themselves and did not know how to repair it. They watched the street with empty expressions, like they were always waiting for someone who did not plan to arrive. Some nights, around 9 or 10, my phone would buzz with a final call from each of them. Same time, same pattern, as if they made a routine out of reaching for the thing they spent years pushing away. The messages were always similar. Please call us. Please come talk to us. Please, we need your help. Please, we are sorry. I listened to the voicemails once in a while, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. Each one sounded smaller than the last. Each one sounded less like my parents, and more like two people learning humility the hard way. I never called back. It was not because I wanted them to suffer. I had no interest in punishment. I simply understood something important at last. I did not exist to be a tool for their convenience. I did not exist to be their emotional punching bag. I did not exist to be the child they molded into their ideal image. I existed as myself. And they did not know who that was, because they never bothered to look. The final shift came one evening when I returned home from running errands. I walked past their house and saw them sitting together on the porch again. But this time, they were not crying. They were watching the sunset with tired faces, hands folded, shoulders slumped. My mother saw me first. She lifted her hand halfway in a hesitant wave. My father looked up too, eyes glossy, expression unreadable. They did not call out to me. They did not approach me. They just watched, quiet and hopeful. I paused at the gate of my new house. The air was still. The sky was orange. The street was silent. Then I walked inside. Their phone calls came again that night. Their voices cracked. Their words pleaded. They said they needed me more than ever. I set my phone down, breathed in, and let the calls ring. For the first time in my life, I slept peacefully.